We have been studying and learning some great and amazing information about our world's oceans. We know that the ocean is always in motion. The ocean has waves. Do you remember what causes the waves of the ocean? That's right, the wind causes the waves. The ocean also has currents, which keeps the water in motion. What is an ocean current? That's right. Currents are like flowing rivers or streams. And those ways that the ocean moves, both the current and the waves, can move ocean animals. Now, we also discussed the coast of an ocean. Where is the coast? That's right. Where the ocean meets the land, that creates the coast. There are many different coastlines in our world's oceans. Some are made up of sandy beaches that gently slope down into the water, and others have very rocky high cliffs. Do you remember what a tide is? That's right. Where the ocean meets the land, a tide is created. So at different times during the day, the level of the water can come up higher on the coast and then recede or go back lower towards the water. That is called the tide. Now, sometimes a tide can create a tide pool. Do you remember what we discussed and learned about a tide pool? I bet you do. A tide pool is a shallow pool of water, and it's created when the tide rises. But when the tide recedes or goes back in towards the water, sometimes in this shallow part of the coast, the water remains. And in a tide pool, oftentimes ocean life remains and lives there. Now, we've also learned about drifters, swimmers, and crawlers. We know that animals move in the ocean water, just like we move. There are three different ways we talked about, the ways that the animals can move in the ocean. The first way that we talked about were swimmers. Now, animals can move themselves by swimming, but we also talked about drifters. How do drifters move? That's right. We know that the ocean is always in motion, and sometimes the ocean sea life is carried by that moving ocean, whether it's the waves, the tides, or the currents. Now, we also talked about crawlers, and those little guys move along the sea floor using their many legs to crawl around. Last, we talked about kelp forests. Do you remember what a kelp plant is? That's right, a kelp plant is also known as seaweed. And we talked about the kelp plant living completely and growing completely underwater. Now, there are different parts of that kelp plant. The part that holds the plant steady so that it is not a drifter is similar to the roots of a plant that grows on the ground. However, we do not call that particular part of a kelp plant roots. Do you remember what that's called? That's right, that's the holdfast. And the holdfast actually grows and grips around rocks so that the plant stays stable and does not become a drifter. Now, the stem of a kelp plant, we remember, is referred to as the stipe. And there are little air sacs along the stipe that allow the leaves to face the top of the ocean surface so that that kelp plant can receive sunlight in order to grow. What are those air sacs called? That's right, they are called floats. Now the leaves of a kelp plant are also known as, that's right, the blades. Very good. And we know, just like plants on land, kelp can create a kelp forest, which is a large group of kelp plants together. Now we are going to learn about a coral reef. Despite what your eyes tell you, coral reefs are not rocks. They may resemble rocks or even plants, but in reality, they are groups of animals. A coral reef is made up of animals, living and dead. A single one of these animals is called a coral polyp. Many of them together are known as a colony. A coral polyp has a swirl of tentacles. At the center of the tentacles is the animal's mouth. Corals use their tentacles to catch their food. Most corals rest during the daytime, so if you go swimming around coral reefs by day, you aren't likely to see many coral polyps with their tentacles out. They would have pulled their tentacles back into their rocky, cup-like homes. At night, though, all the little coral polyps put out their tentacles to try and catch something to eat. They feed on whatever smaller things happen to be drifting by. As the coral polyps grow, the coral reef gets bigger and bigger. Many people go diving around coral reefs to see the beautiful and brightly colored fish that live in them. Divers also enjoy watching other animals that live in and near these reefs, from ships to sea urchins to parrotfish. Underwater divers should take care when they swim around coral reefs. Although the reef formation looks strong, they are actually quite fragile and break apart easily. If you damage a piece of the reef, you can kill all of the little coral polyps that are living there. Now it's time for you to work with your learning coach to complete the investigation for Lesson 6. You're going to make a model of a coral polyp. Take a look at the examples shown. Follow the directions to create the coral polyp using tissue paper and a small paper cup. After you have created your coral polyp, I would like you to take a look at it carefully and think about some questions relating to what we discussed in today's lesson. Think about what forms the tentacles on your coral polyp. Also, what do corals use their tentacles for? And show what your coral would look like resting during the day, and then show what your coral polyp would look like catching food at night. Good luck, enjoy, and have fun with your learning coach with the investigation for Lesson 6.